Hi everyone and welcome to class. I am Dr. Pout and I'm going to be the instructor for this class that we're going to use to study international relations theory. I'm going to talk quite a bit about that in sort of my first lecture video. What is a theory? Why do we study theories? So for now what I'm going to do is just really go through the syllabus. This video is really aimed at giving you a good overview of what we're going to do in class, what sort of assignments we're going to have, what my late policy is, and some other policies as well. And basically, we'll go over sort of a high-level view of how the class is structured. We'll talk about things like readings as well, and so that's what this is for. All right, what I'm going to do actually when I speak, so you've seen what I look like and everything. Here I am. This is my home office that I'm in right now. And so you've seen that. Rather than stare at this for the rest of the time, I'm going to have you stare at the syllabus instead. I think the syllabus is it's very important. It's oftentimes overlooked by students. Even to use the word look sometimes is, in terms of overlooked, it's too much. This document that I'm about to sort of go over here and explain, develop a little bit, right, by telling you perhaps some background on each of the things and to maybe further explain things that are written in there. But this document really does constitute the agreement between you and I about what you can expect in the class, and any policies, any things that might come up or that have come up honestly in the past. Often, if it's in the syllabus, I've dealt with it at least once or twice, but sometimes actually much more than that. Sometimes once or twice a semester or more. And so I want to avoid some of the embarrassment that can come in some of these situations later on, especially later on in the semester when it comes to sort of grading and things like that, by going over some things that might happen and that can potentially happen, and how they'll be dealt with as and when they do happen. I was going to say, I can't emphasize enough, right, that, this is really an important document. You should understand everything in it. I'm going to put like a little sort of quiz thing on there where you have to, before the class opens up, you sort of got to agree to this, right? If you don't want to be bound by the terms, if you don't want to be graded in the way that I'm going to explain here, then really you should very, very carefully consider perhaps not taking this class, or perhaps not taking it with me. At the very minimum, if you find something in there that you're sort of not happy to be held to at this point, you should certainly send me an email and talk to me about it. All right. I'm not going to do any sort of blanket statement here about what will happen, but I mean, unless there's sort of quite an unusual circumstance that I don't see, sort of generally speaking, then this is the document, and these are the policies. And this is the assessments, right, that we'll do here in this class. And if it doesn't look good to you, then it's probably not the right class for you, and maybe there's other people that you could take it with as well. All right. So that aside, I hope that doesn't put anybody off in any way, because I love teaching this stuff, and I enjoy being part of your learning experience. I really do. Like, this is my main function. I'm, as I said, Dr. Pout. I did my PhD here at ASU in political science. My specialty, my concentration, my major concentration, as I was doing my PhD, was international politics, right? And so that's what we're doing here, right? So this is really in my wheelhouse, in as much as I have a wheelhouse, right? This is it, and it's the thing that I'm sort of probably most interested in lots of the time. So yeah, so I'm interested to talk about it with you and to sort of help you experience it in some of the same way that I've experienced it. And so certainly I'm excited, and I hope that I wouldn't put anybody off. That said, again, this is the syllabus. All right, so having done that now, let me share my screen with you. Okay, so hopefully, if I've done that right, then you should be seeing an online syllabus for 2022. I've updated this class recently. I do it fairly often, I'd say. what I've done this time really is I've sort of switched away from a reader that I used to use. I used to have a reader that had sort of very small portions from all sorts of different thinkers, some of the ones that I've retained here. But I guess I didn't think that it went as much in depth as I wanted to go. It was maybe very broad, but not very deep. I wanted to go a little bit deeper. So I've changed it a little bit. And one of the things that I've changed is that I'll sort of start with the readings, I guess, here. So the readings, I've got this big list of books now, and also some articles as well, some journal articles. I've got a list of those too. And they're on the syllabus. I'm not going to require you to do any of this reading here. You're not required to do any reading. That's sort of hard for me to say in some ways. These books are great books. The books that I've chosen, that they're foundational and they're really like important books for the study of international politics. What we're going to try and do here in this class is explain how international politics works. Why do states behave the way they do? Why is there war? Why, what do international organizations do? And why do they do it? We're going to try and explain that from sort of a scientific, at least academic point of view here, right? And so these books that I'm using or that I've listed in the syllabus really form a very, very good foundation, like an excellent foundation. If you did read all of these books, which is certainly an option, you would be, in terms of understanding how international politics works, there would be very few people in the world, indeed, very few people who would have a better grasp on the sort of the collective human knowledge about how international politics works than somebody that's read these books. Okay, so when I said that, I thought, well, I've read these books, right? And that's the point. And so I've switched away from the reader and I've switched to sort of, I'm going to do more lecturing in this class, right? So you'll see a lot more lectures. One of the things I've got in the past, right, students oftentimes they've asked me to lecture more, which I don't know, I guess I wouldn't have guessed that at the beginning, but anyway, that's what they've asked. And so that's sort of the direction I'm going in a little bit more lecture heavy. Okay, so all my lectures are based on these books. I'm not making anything up myself really here, right? I'm not breaking any new ground. All I'm really doing is I'm going back to the foundations of the study of international politics. And I did this during the summer. I reread these books and I developed lectures based on these. And so, I'm explaining, I guess, my reading of these books. This is how I understand this is what I understand Ken Waltz to be saying in theory of international politics. This is what I understand Cohen and Nye to be saying in Power and Interdependence. What I wanted to do as well, like maybe just to kind of give you an idea of these readings and sort of the impact that they've had on the study of politics. I'll take this one here, Morgenthau, Politics Among Nations. Now, this is the sort of the oldest book that we have. There's sort of different versions of it, right? There's this brief version, but the original, like an original sort of full version of this is going for like $750 on Amazon. So I'm not expecting you to buy that. Even like have a look and see if you can find this in your library, maybe. It might be an expensive book. It's an old book. It's, I think 1948 is when it's published. But what I wanted to show you is sort of how influential it's been, how sort of fundamental it's been to the study of international politics. And one way to do that, right, is to sort of say, well, how many other studies of international politics have used this book? And so that's what I'm going to do now, because I don't know the number off the top of my head. This is taking a little bit longer than I had planned for. Yeah, it looks like according to Google Scholar, we've got like 19,504 citations, and I bet that's a bit of an understatement. That might be just one of the editions of it, right? Or this is all that Google scholars found, but almost, in some ways, almost everything that's been written on international politics since 1948 has in some ways been sort of influenced by this book, right? So it's important. And all of these books, they might not be quite, because they came later, right? So they're not the first book that was written, but but they're all very, very influential, very important books. So again, get them if you can, read them if you can as well, and if you want to. But my lectures are based heavily on them. This is where my material is coming from, and I will refer to these folks by name, and I'll tell you where each of these ideas are coming from, and I'll develop some of their ideas for you in the lectures. You'll notice on the syllabus, I've got this available online through ASU Library. That applies to some of the books. For example, the Cynthia Enloe book, excellent feminist book on international politics, the most recent of any of the books that we'll read. It's a great one to read. Wendt Social Theory of International Politics, that's also on ASU Library, and it's available online to you, and that's also a great book. I mean, all of these are. All of these articles here, I will refer to these, and they'll be available on Canvas for you to read. And so, again, all of the reading in this course is optional, which I understand what that means probably to you. You're very busy, you have to prioritize, but I do highly recommend it. But as I said, my lectures will cover them quite thoroughly. Well, at least to the level that I imagine that is a good level for where we are, where I imagine you are as undergraduate students in perhaps political science or other topics, but probably this is particularly developed with the political science student in mind. All right, so that's the readings. Again, optional, but recommended. What we're going to do here, so with these books, sort of the lectures that I'm going to be based on this, we're going to look at these 5 approaches. It depends how you count them, but I've got 5 names there. Approaches to international politics, right? What we're going to try and figure out is, what do we know about international politics? And, there's different schools of thought on this. There's different groups of scholars who approach the study of international politics from quite different places. And they come up with different theories and different laws, and they're looking really at different things, we'll see. But all say that they're looking at international politics, and I think they all are looking at international politics. They're all looking at the real world, but maybe different real worlds, and that's I stole from Cynthia Enloe. But anyway, realism, liberalism, English school, constructivism, feminism. English school is sort of an early beginnings of constructivism, sort of an earlier constructivism. When I'm saying constructivism in this class, I'm talking really about Alexander Wendt, who he sort of takes a bunch of approaches that happened before him that was sort of constructivist, right? And we'll talk about what that means, and sort of takes them all and like throws bits of them away and develops some other bits of them and sort of turns it into a more, or at least tries to turn it into a more sort of coherent and perhaps more mainstream, and I might use the word mainstream quite a lot in this class, but a more mainstream approach, right? The English school was sort of before constructivism, or was before Alexander Wendt at least, and was sort of a particular way of sort of getting, I suppose, to constructivism. Realism and liberalism, they form very much the sort of main hardcore of scholars in big research institutions in the West, like the United States in particular, probably. Most of those scholars we could fit into sort of a realist or probably more likely a liberalist approach to things. And so we'll talk more about that. But, that's not to say that there's not plenty of people who are constructivists or feminists, or perhaps other schools of thought that we're not actually going to pursue very, very much in this class, because we do have limited time. But anyway, We're going to look at those 5. I'm going to move down now to here, instructor contact. On this one, it's just a matter of saying, look, we're online class here. I'm not expecting any of you to come to my office hours. Although if you are on campus and you would like to come to my office hours, I do have office hours. Let me actually tell you on this video when they are. So I didn't think to put it in the syllabus actually. I'm looking now at my other syllabus for this semester, or another one of my syllabi. This is my office here. It's on the 6th floor of Core Hall, 6725. And this semester I'm going to do Mondays and Wednesdays, 12 noon to 1 p.m. So if you are nearby and you want to pop in and see me in my office hours, it's a first come, first served thing. So yeah. But more than likely for most of you, you'll be contacting me via email. That's the best way to get hold of me. I strongly, strongly recommend you sending me a proper email. Don't go through Canvas. Sending me messages through Canvas, like I get them, they come into my email. Sometimes there's delay in me getting them. Sometimes students say, I sent this a long time ago. And it's like, well, I just got it now. So there's that. But then there's also the main problem that I find. I don't find that problem a ton. But the main problem that I find is that it does not thread conversations. And while I would love to have you think, and for me to really have this, I'd love to have this where I know every single one of my students' names and which class they're in, and know what they struggle with, what they find easy, and what they're interested in, what they're not interested in. Realistically, that's not happening. I have about 800 students a year, and I don't always know which class you're in, and that sort of thing. And I also don't always remember, like, let's say you emailed me like 1 or 2 weeks ago about a particular thing and I responded, and then you're doing a follow-on. Unless I've got that thread in front of me, I'm going to forget. So if you send me an email from your email address, even if it's your ASU email address, that's great. If it's another email address, that's also okay. But if you send it through Canvas, it doesn't thread the messages. So we'll be having this conversation, like, let's say, you send me one day and then I reply the next day, and then you send me another one, and then let's say like 2 or 3 days go by and then you send me like a follow-up. Well, if you send it through Canvas now, that it's not threaded at all. So I don't know what we've been saying. I've forgotten. Yeah, maybe not 2 or 3 days, but maybe a week or a month later, I will have forgotten. So email's the best, because then I can just go back and say, okay, what was our conversation? And then I've got it all there. I don't have to ask you which class you in again. What have we been talking about? So please do use your email. Please expect a response. I'm not always on my email. I only really respond to emails once a day because I have so many students. It's I think when I first started here at ASU, which is, it's gone like 6 or so years now, and when I was first doing it, and I taught before, like at Montana State, and I taught at Glendale Community College for a bit, but in those prior, like at like Glendale Community College, I was teaching one class, right? And then at Montana, I think I started teaching 3 classes because I was filling in for a professor that was in the legislature there, the state legislature. And then but then I, when I came back to ASU, I was doing my PhD, and I was just doing 1 class a semester or something. And then, then I could pretty much answer emails as they came in. But now that there's so many, I found at the beginning of working here and teaching 5 classes or 6 classes a semester, depending on the semester, usually 5 these days. I find that if I wanted to, I could really sit on just email all day, backwards and forwards. And it seems like the more that I respond, right, the more questions around. So, well, that's not a good. Honestly, I'm not too bad at answering questions. So please do send me emails. But it does seem like, if you're responding quickly, right, then you get quick responses. And I found that I was mostly doing emails. So I do it just once a day now. And that seems to work better. But I mean, the sort of downside with that is that you might wait a full day before you get a response from me. And so expect that. You've got to build that into your expectations. If we have a deadline, for example, if you're emailing me, and this does happen, by the way, right, I'll get and I'll see this the next day, right? The deadlines are at midnight oftentimes. I think for our assignments, they're all at midnight. So, you can imagine at 11:30, somebody sending me an email saying, oh, what, I didn't understand this, or how do I do this assignment? And it's like, well, you know, I'm in bed, honestly. It's not very rock and roll, but 11:30 at night, I'm asleep. And so I'm not going to see that email. But even if you might have sent it, like maybe you sent it at 4 or 5, you know, maybe even 1 p.m., like I still might, because I'm only going to do my emails once a day, you know, so please do give me at least a day before you need an answer, please. And you might get it within, you certainly should get it within 24 hours. Now, the weekends, though, I usually don't check emails. So on a Saturday, I won't check it, and on a Sunday, I almost certainly won't check my email either of those days. And so in that case, right, you're going to be waiting until Monday for a response. So if you send it sort of Friday afternoon, you know, it's going to be Monday likelihood. The likelihood is. And that's the same during holidays as well. If we have a university holiday, I think we have two of them this coming semester, but we have spring break, don't we? And then we have, I think we have Martin Luther King Day, is that right? So we have those, and so those days as well will be like weekends. I won't check my email on those days. Probably not. It's not impossible, but I probably won't. And so that's something to take into account. All right, so that's contacting me. Email is probably the best way. My email is here, right? It's quite easy to remember if you know my last name. My first name is Daniel, right? So it's a dpow@asu.edu, and I'll try and get back to you within 24 hours, but it might be longer than that on weekends during the holidays. We've done readings. All right, so on to assessments now. There's 2 types of assessment here. There's actually going to be something like 7 assessments that you do, 7 or 8. Check. The thing that I'm not sure about is the discussion posts, how many of those there'll be. I haven't really cut this into modules. I've taught this once on this version of the class. I've taught it in person, but I haven't taught it online yet. So we're going to do the same essay responses as I do in my in-person class, but the discussion posts are going to be something different from what I used to do in my class. So in my in-person class. So let me talk about the essay responses first. They're up here. There's 3 of them. They're worth 20% each. All right. So they're big deals. I've put 1,250 words. What I'm actually going to do while you watch here is I'm going to increase this. And the reason why I'm going to increase it, I'm going to increase it to 2,000 words. I'm going to increase it to 2,000 words because 1,250 wasn't enough, basically. The students in the in-person class almost always wrote more than 1,250, like into the over 1,500 usually. And I noticed that the ones that wrote barely 1,250, they weren't very good. So that was, in some ways, I mean, you know, they should take responsibility for what they wrote, but in some ways, like I'm not setting you up very well to be successful if I give you, or if I say that I'm expecting 1,250 words, but really you've got to have more words to do it. So I'm popping that up to 2,000, get as close to, you know, keep it fairly close to 2,000. Probably won't really start to affect your grade if it's less than, until it's less than 1,800, but it will start to affect your grade. Just the length of it will start to affect your grade if it's less than 1,800. But don't hear that as like, oh, it's only 1,800 words, because honestly, like, it will be better if it's a little bit longer than that. So, and the way I do it is I'm going to basically release questions about a week before the due dates. Well, exactly 1 week before the due dates, I'm going to release the questions. And I might do like 1 or 2 of them and that you can choose from perhaps, but I don't know for sure yet. There'll be at least 1 question. And if I do ask you to choose, you will only do 1 question. Right? You're only going to answer 1 question at a time, right? 1 times 3. 1 question 3 times in the semester. So, you know, and I'm going to ask you to respond, and the response that I'm going to ask you for, it's an essay, but I want it to be pulled completely from our lectures and readings, right? Remember that the readings are optional, of course, but remember that the lectures are heavily based on those readings. And so what I want you to be doing when you're responding, I do want you to quote it. I want you to refer to specific concepts and specific ideas that you've heard in these lectures, or perhaps that you've read in the books. That's okay too. But it shouldn't be from outside of our body of literature. That's not to say that it's banned or anything, but it's just that the majority of what you're writing should be showing me, hey, I'm handling these concepts. I'm coming to grips with the things that you're talking about in the lectures. I understand what you're talking about, or I understand what Waltz is saying, right? Because I've read this book, or I understand what Mearsheimer is saying. The people that I've picked, I haven't picked them randomly, right? I think I've already said this, right? I've picked them because they're sort of at the foundations. These are the people where if you go to any other professor of international relations and you talk to that person, they will know these people, right? These are the sort of the canon, if you like. You know, and there's always some room around the edges to be like, well, why didn't you include this person? Why did you include that person? But not a ton of movement, right? There's not a ton of these are the standard ones. So I want you to really focus on these. I don't want you to use any sort of online. It won't be as good, right? That's the thing. It won't be as good, and it won't be as relevant. And what I'm looking for really is for you to engage with these particular authors, because these particular authors, as I said, are the sort of foundations of how we understand the world in terms of international politics. So focus on these folks. You'll get that in the lectures. I'll only talk about these folks. You'll get it, of course, by reading their books and their articles. So feel free to do that. But don't really focus it. If you find yourself sort of reading a lot of different things that are from outside of this, you know, your essay is not going to be as good. You're not really going to be doing the thing that I'm asking you to do. So your score is going to be a bit lower, or maybe considerably lower. And this is really what the essays are about, is trying to see if you're picking it up and understanding these particular ideas from these particular authors. And so that's what I'm looking for. All right, let me see. I've put that in the syllabus basically to score an A on each of these papers, right, which is what I want you to do, of course. You should also be able to give your own opinion about theories and analyze differences and nuance within theories, right? So, for example, the difference between offensive and defensive realism, which you'll see that those are two separate lectures. A small amount of your grade will be about punctuation, spelling, and overall presentation, but the main focus of the grade is the detail that you can marshal from our class content to answer the question, right? So this is what I mean by the syllabus being important. Like, that's what I'm going off, right? That's what I'm looking for. If you wonder what I'm looking for from the essays, it's right there. There it is. Read that. Of course, if you have any clarification questions that you need answering, feel free to email me, but email me quite a long time ahead. These essays, you know, they're not nothing. These are the significant part of your grade, the 60%. And yeah, you should be quite comfortable writing them. Well, you don't need to be comfortable writing them at all. You can be quite uncomfortable, but you need to at least be comfortable that you understand what I'm asking you for and how you would go about giving it to me. All right. Yeah, I've said that. Look, the authors and books I have selected form a large part of the core of international relations theory and should receive a lot of attention in a class like this. Yes. All right, so that's those three. You'll see the dates on Canvas. You won't see the questions. Some of you might email me and say, oh, what's the question? Say, there isn't one yet. I mean, there is one, but I'll probably modify the ones that I used last semester, right? So they sort of exist in some form, but they're not quite the finalized ones yet. But they will be, of course, by the time you get them, which will be 1 week before they're due. You know, part of it is to sort of put a little bit of pressure on you, but also, I mean, you get a full week. So, you know, if my suspicions are correct, like lots of students are not doing this for 7 days straight. Usually, sometimes they might be putting it together in the last few hours. So you have a week, but that's a specific window that you have to work with there. All right. Discussion posts, there's going to be, like I said, probably about 5 of them, 5 to 7 of them, like 1 per module. I'm not sure exactly how many modules there are yet. I haven't divided it up quite yet, but there'll be 1 each module, and you will answer it, and they'll all be worth the same, right? So if there's 8 of them, there'll be 5% each. If there's, well, don't make me do any more math. There's 5 of them will be 8% each, but it'll be more like 8 to 5, I think, in the end. Okay, and this is kind of formulaic, right? This is a shorter event. This is not the 2,000 words. This is more like, you know, it's a paragraph, a long paragraph, or a medium-sized paragraph. I don't know. something like that, medium to long. And I'm looking for 4 things really. And with these, basically, if you have these 4 things, you'll get a good portion of the points. What I'm actually going to put as a 5th thing, which was in the description up there, but I want to make a bigger deal of it. I want you to respond to 2 of your classmates' posts. So I want you to respond. In terms of that response, just as long as you're sort of addressing their question in some way, that's all that matters. Let's go through them more quickly. What I'm asking for. I'm asking for a reference to a particular part of the lecture or the reading, right? To a particular author. Right? So I want you to say, look, Waltz talks about the self-help system. All right, and so that's the first one. You know, you can directly quote me. That's great. Or certainly directly quote a book. That's even better. Or you can, you can just say, Dr. Powell mentions in the lecture, right? He talks about Waltz's self-help system. Okay, so you've got that. Now, the next part of it is a quick explanation of what you took away about that. Well, it seemed like a self-help system, or it seems like it's the anarchy in the international system that causes a self-help system. And the self-help system means that you can't, no state can rely on any other state for its protection. It has to be self-reliant in that. Okay, so that now you've done this second point here, right? A quick explanation of what that means, like what you took away about that. The next thing is like, why is it important? You can say something like, well, it's important, right? Part of the reason it's important to me is that, well, it sort of sets limits on what states can really do, right? Because they can't, if you can't rely on other states for your own protection, one of the things that you're probably forced to do then is to provide for your own protection. And so every state's got to have an armed force, something like that. Right? Why is that important? Why is it interesting? All right. And then you ask a question about that. That invites discussion will broaden your own understanding of that area. You say, well, is everybody providing for their own protection? Right? Does the fact that, let's say, Costa Rica doesn't have its own military, right? Does that mean that it's not a self-help system? Right? That's not a bad question. And then, of course, after that'll be the end of your original post. But then I want you to respond to 2 of your classmates' posts. Well, I'm going to take that out of that 5th thing because that's really wrong. I do want you still to do that, but this is not what your post shouldn't have your response in it. You should go and respond to those other 2 things. What I'll do though is I will highlight this so that you've also got to respond to the other students. All right, there you go. Final grades. I don't do pluses or minuses anymore. Yeah, you either get an A or you get a B, or you get a C or a D or an E. Honestly, like in terms of grading, like I'm not. If it's good, you'll get. If you do good work, for example, if you do everything that I've asked you to in this essay responses thing, and if you give a good account of things, you'll get an A. If you do pretty much everything and it's okay, you'll get a B. If there's bits that really are missing here, or it's like much shorter maybe, or it's just like, or it's taking into account all sorts of things from outside of really what we're talking about. It's not really getting into like the sort of the meat of realism, for example, in our first essay. Well, you might get a C in that occasion. And then like it has to be pretty bad to get a D or an E. With a discussion post, it's basically if you've got everything in here and you've got the 2 responses, you're probably going to get an A every time. And this is very doable in terms of the discussion post. You'll probably get an A every time if you do all these things. The only way you'll really lose points is if you're either talking about something completely outside of anything that we've really been discussing, or if you miss one of these points, right, or you don't respond to the 2 posts. Right, so it's very doable. A's and B's in this class is going to be very doable for you. And that said, right, and I don't want to make it over, like I don't want to sort of sell you a lie, right, that it's overly easy. You still have to do the work, and you have to do as probably as best as you can. But I will say that people will get D's and E's in this class. I know that they will. Almost always though, the way to get a D and an E in this or most of my classes is really just not to do the work. If you're missing work, I can't give you any points for it, and I'll give you zeros. Obviously, that's all I can do. So, you know, just try and keep up with the pace of things. You know, it's not a ton of assignments for a class like this, and so you know you can do it. But an A is really the goal, I'd say, for everybody. It's very doable, and if not, then a B. Really, to get a C or a D, you've got to be quite detached from the class, I think. So don't be. On that late work, I'm accepting late work. If you're late, I will accept it. Canvas is going to apply an automatic penalty, and that penalty is going to be 5% per day, and that's explained there in the syllabus. Canvas will automatically do that, right? The other thing Canvas will do is it will automatically put a 0 in. This is how I have it set up. It'll automatically put a 0 in if you're late. Like if you're like a minute late, it'll put a 0, like a second problem, all right? That doesn't mean that I won't accept late work, because I'm telling you now that I do accept late work. And so that grade, it'll be a 0 until I grade the late work, and then it will change. Well, you know, as long as the work doesn't deserve a 0, but almost. I don't think I've ever given a 0 for a piece of work that was properly handed in and properly done. Only for academic dishonesty, which we'll talk about. But yeah, it's eventually after a few weeks, after 2 or 3 weeks, like the 5% a day sort of makes it so that now, you know, even if you hand it in late, you know, you might get a 0 because it's just so late. So try not to hand in work late. If you know that you're going to need an extension, please do get in contact with me before the deadline. And if you have some sort of a valid reason, like maybe we can, but that has to be that has to be the procedure, right? You've got to tell me beforehand, and I'll see what I can do. All right, but I'm not guaranteeing anything. All right. Okay, so that's late work. It's accepted. You get a penalty. That's the whole semester. I'll accept it the whole semester, but there'll be a penalty. And after 2 or 3 weeks after it's due, it won't be worth anything because of the penalties. So the next one is the grade of incomplete. This grade of incomplete, read this. This is I have a very specific policy. On this one, I truly believe, and I sincerely believe that I'm only implementing the policy of the School of Politics and Global Studies. And I get, you know, I used to get sent it every year or every semester, perhaps in an email, and I would read it. And I was always a little bit out of touch with it, right? But I've got to a point now where I think that I am implementing the policy that, this is the way I understand the policy, the school policy, but not my policy. So I'm interpreting it. This is my interpretation. I believe it's the correct interpretation. You might have you might have had in the past other professors, either from the School of Politics and Global Studies or from other departments, who might have different incomplete policies, and that can happen. So make sure that you understand mine. It's fairly stringent, but again, I don't think that it's more stringent than the actual school policy. I think this is the actual school policy. So, you know, be prepared to be held to this, right? This is probably one of the biggest things that happen, and the sort of unpleasantness at the end of the semester is, or the end of the session. You know, 1 or 2 of you in a class like this will likely come to me and say, like, what can I do to pass this class? I haven't done any work all semester. What can I do? Can I have it incomplete? You know, finish all the work another time? And the answer has to be no in that scenario. It has to be no. And I'll say no, and I do say no, and it's not that pleasant, right? Some students might say, well, but I have this, but I was sick all semester. It's like, well, there is something else for that, right? If you're sick the whole semester, there's this, like, you know, withdrawal due to illness or something, right? Or compassionate or sickness withdrawal, like, and that exists, right? And that's for that purpose, because people get sick, and, like, you know, maybe you're so sick you can't do your work, and that's bad, right? And that happens, and you know, I have all the sympathy in the world, but that's not an incomplete. That's something different. Right? So you wouldn't get incomplete in that scenario. You know, and it might be that you have other things to do. Like, for sure, you have other things to do. You know, students say, well, but I was helping my parents move, or I was in this other country or this other state, and I couldn't do my work, and I had computer problems. Right. But the thing is, if you haven't done, like, I mean, each of those has a different answer, right? Because if you've had computer problems like the whole semester, then you'll see at the end of the syllabus, you as an ASU student, whether you're online or whether you're in person, and this class will be taken by people who are both only online and some people who are also in person, as well as being online, of course. But all of you have access to the University Technology Office. And really, like, sometimes students ask me about, well, I try to do this in Canvas, or I try to do that. I don't really know Canvas. Well, I can use it from an instructor's point of view, but I'm not really a technical expert on Canvas in any way. Couldn't really tell you how it worked exactly and how it doesn't work. Right? But there are those experts at ASU, and those are available to you, right? So I'm talking about something later on in the syllabus, but that's okay. Make use of them. Like, open tickets with them. Like, demand, like, ask things of them, because that's what they're there for. That's their job. But I'm not going to be as good a source for sort of technical help with Canvas. As I said, I understand how Canvas works, but I can make a class in it, and I can put videos up there and all that sort of stuff, but I can't. Anyway, I can't fix problems with it. So, okay. I've talked about grades of incomplete. It's unlikely you'll get one. The only way you'll get one is if, for me, the only way I'll agree to a grade of incomplete is if, you've done all your work, but then the last 1 or 2 assignments you couldn't hand in because something happened at that moment that prevented you from handing it in, and I'll say, okay, and we have to do a form. You and I will have to write up a form. You write it up, I'll add my details to it as well and sign it, and it has to be on file. And so, there's a whole process, but really the first step is really to ask me, hey, do you think I qualify for an incomplete? But if you haven't done any of your work, or if you've missed quite a lot of your work up to that point, then the answer will certainly be a no. If you're saying, I just want to hand in like 4 or 5 pieces of work, well, that's like half the semester, so there'll be a no. All right, academic integrity. This one is probably the last one I'll spend too much time talking about, because this is the one that comes up as well every single semester, every single class, I think. I'm doing it for 6 years. I find people cheating. That's an oversimplification. I find people who are violating the academic integrity policy of ASU. When I find that, I have to do something. It's serious, right? You can really get thrown out of the university for this. So please do not do it. And I don't know why students do it. I don't know if they think that, like, well, I won't get caught, or if they think, well, sometimes it's probably that they don't know. Honestly, sometimes it's that they don't know that this is not in compliance with the academic integrity policy. There is a link on the syllabus, which you can see, and you can go there. You should know this, right, for sure, because imagine you're going along not knowing, and then all of a sudden you're thrown out of the university for an academic integrity violation. Like, that's not impossible. And so make sure you know it. Make sure you know. In my class, here's what I will do as your instructor. If I suspect you, and I don't have to prove anything here, right? If I suspect you, then I will give you a 0 for that assignment if it's the first offense. So if it's one of your essays, right, I'll give you a 0 for it. Right now you're 20% down for sure. Same, obviously, if with your discussion post as well, although I imagine that's a lower risk, but it's possible as well there. So I'll find it. I'll give you a 0 for the first time. If you do it more than once, if I've given you a 0 and I've said this is a violation of academic integrity policy, and then you carry on doing it, right, there'll be further repercussions from me. Like, I'll do more things. The most sort of extreme thing that I can do, and I have seen this done, is I can give you an XE on your transcript, right? Which means failure due to academic dishonesty. I can just fail you the whole course and make a note on your transcript that the reason why you failed was that you were academically dishonest. That's a big deal, right? Now, there's other steps that the school or the college, right? The College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, or indeed the university, there's other steps that they can take as well, that they might take in that sort of scenario, but that's up to them, right? And that's not in my hands. But in my hands, it is to give you a set and give you a 0, and that's what I will do the first attempt. And the second attempt, I will consider further sanctions up to, and I guess up to and including the XE on the transcript. So don't do it. I don't, like I said, I'm not sure what sort of benefit it is. Like, my classes are not that hard. I don't grade that stringently. All I really ask of you is that you engage honestly with the lectures and perhaps with the readings as well, and just do your own work and just do it the best you can. You know, it's not really worth cheating, because if you do the work according to how it's described on the syllabus and you do your best, like, it's likely you're going to get an A or a B. Highly likely, highly likely. You know, so if you're not doing that, it makes me think something like, well, you just don't want to do the work, right? But and that's fine. Like, but if you don't want to do the work, you can't pass the class. Anyway, don't cheat. One or two of you are going to try, I think. That tends to happen, but don't do it. Don't do it. Because I can and do catch people all the time. Anyway. All right, so that's the last thing I'm going to say. Please don't do it. It's a bit embarrassing as well. I have to tell you, like, oh, look, I'm giving you a 0 because you cheated. And then you say, well, no, I didn't. And then I say, well, look, I've got this and this and this. And you say, okay, well, I did. And that's sad. All right. Read the other things because they're important too. The thing that worries me the most, I guess, and this hasn't really ever happened to me, but these sort of reporting Title IX violations and the sexual discrimination. Just the main thing to bear in mind is that if you do tell me anything, I have to report it. It's ASU policy that I report it, and I'm a big believer in like sticking to policy. Like I'm not in a position where I should change the university's policy or try to change them, right? By not keeping them or by doing something different from what they've asked me to do. I'm a believer in being fairly honest and true, and you know, sticking to what they've asked me to do, and I'll do it. So something like this, I have to report it, and I will. In terms of these sexual discrimination type ideas, I've never had any of this, but it does happen. I've heard of stories from other people where it's happened, or other professors. Don't do this online. Like, don't do this. Don't do it. I mean, it's a crime for just don't commit crimes while you're here. Yeah, I'll probably add this to the bottom of the syllabus, but basically I'll say something like, this is the syllabus. It's complete, pretty complete. I mean, it is complete. I can be held to everything that's in here. I'm going to hold you to everything that's in here. But like, it's possible, it has happened in the past, right, that I've had to change something in there. If I do have to change anything, it's unlikely, but if I do, I will let you know on Canvas. And so, but it's your responsibility to take note of those changes, if any. Again, it's unlikely, but it's not impossible. So do keep an eye on the announcements from Canvas. Yeah. All right, that's it. I've gone through my syllabus. As I said, make sure you're very familiar with it. I've got technical support down here at the bottom, which I already talked about. Again, this is one of my favorite classes to teach, if not my favorite. And so I'm excited for the semester, and I look forward to seeing your work, seeing how you're engaging with Morgenthau and Waltz and Ashley and Enlo and everyone. So anyway, hope this video was helpful, and I will see you later.